Hi, everybody. I'm Simon Woods. I'm President and CEO of the League of American Orchestras. It's great to see you all, or not see you all, as it were, today. And I apologize for the rather messy background at the back of this back of my image. We just now that the League is largely a virtual organization, we've moved into smaller offices, and it is still somewhat chaotic. So apologies for that. But thank you all for joining us. Incredibly happy that you're all here for this information session about this very important program. Some of you who have taken part in this program over the pilot period, which was last year, will know something about it already. We did a short pilot phase with a pretty aggressive timeline, which was a kind of proof of concept, if you like. About what we wanted to achieve, to kind of answer some fundamental questions, and not least to be able to go back to our prospective funder with something based in reality, not just a stab in the dark. And so we've had a incredibly productive conversation with the Sakana Foundation, Saka and Bill Fisher, over the summer, and been absolutely thrilled to receive a generous chunk of funding for them, which really sees this program now launch officially. And as you'll hear, this is a kind of a closed 3-year program. This is not a program that is going to go on forever. It's a program that has forever consequences, and absolutely critical consequences for the long-term health of the field. But it's a program that's going to happen over 3 years, and then it will have some kind of long tail. But the bulk of the work is going to happen in this 3 years. So we have a lot to do. We have big goals, and it's an ambitious program. And I think when I look at all the work that the League is doing right now, this is probably the most important program we've launched in a number of years. Because the magnitude of what we're trying to achieve is big, and it's necessary that we are successful in this work. So we thank you all very much for being part of this, for sort of taking the leap of coming today and finding out about the program. And we hope that as you learn more about it, you will agree to take part with us, and we're expecting a pretty healthy cohort of orchestras to join us on this journey. So with that, I'm just going to pass it to our Vice President of Inclusion and Learning, Kane Thomason-Reedus, who can get us moving here. Over to you, Kane.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks for taking time to be here with us. And thank you to everybody. This is a really great moment to be here. Many of you were involved in our pilot year last year, and I realize it is a bit of a stretch to call it a year, because for most of you, it probably was 6 months and felt like 2. It was fast-paced. We got a lot done, and we learned a lot. And thankfully, we are able to continue that work now and plan for 3 years of much more activity with many more people. So welcome to all of you who are new to this program as well. We have a lot to cover in this short hour. I want you to know that every bit of information we're going to share with you is also being posted to our website, and you'll have access to directly as a registrant from this webinar. So everything that we reference, everything that we describe, you will have in written detail, and any of the links that are discussed or shown, you'll have access to. So please do feel free to ask questions, but please also know that you'll have plenty of time to look over this. And we do have 2 Q&A sessions that are already scheduled for people that may want to come and follow up with more questions. And in general, Sam, Andrew, and I are also very happy to talk with people and organizations who have a lot more specific questions. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into it. First is how we arrived at this point. What is our context? Why are we here? First of all, the League of American Orchestras has this vision of a thriving future for orchestras and their communities that celebrates creativity, artistry, and inclusion. We've said that about our entire organization and all of our work. Our mission is equally relevant here. We exist to champion the vitality of music and the orchestral experience, support the orchestra community, and lead change boldly. And from my perspective, this program is definitely trying to support all three of those aspects. And especially with your active participation, I think we'll be successful. As we've done our own strategic planning as an organization, we've talked about our need to accelerate the pace of change in equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm going to make a guess here that many of you attending this are already involved in any number of efforts along the lines of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we applaud that. We congratulate you and thank you for that. This is one of our commitments to support you in that work and to work together so that we can get more done more efficiently in a shorter amount of time. Next slide, please. I want to acquaint you with some of the resources that we've already been putting out there. So for some of you, these will be very familiar. For some, these may be new. We have on our website what we call an Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Resource Center. And that contains links for just about every single thing we do related to EDI. So it's a great starting point. For those of you that are looking for regularly updated statistics, especially from all of our reporting and research, we have what we call now our EDI Data Hub. It's a great place to go for those statistics that you are looking for and a top-level bit of analysis. So not all of the data there is shared in as thorough a way as we do in our major reports that you might see, but there's just a lot of really helpful information that is timely and presented in a way that's easy for sharing. We have then, of course, after that, a number of reports and guides that help with everything from racial diversity to the wide variety of equity practices that orchestras are doing right now. And with our case studies and that Catalyst snapshots, that last one, again, there's a lot of variety in equity, diversity, and inclusion work being done by orchestras. So I always want to point that out and celebrate that. Next slide, please. One of our large collaborative efforts that many of you are a part of is the National Alliance for Audition Support. This was created by and is managed with the Sphinx organization, the New World Symphony, and us, the League of American Orchestras. That is where many of those early audition and tenure recommendations came from. For many of you as orchestras, it's something that you've supported and participated in terms of recruitment of musicians of color. And for any of the musicians that we have joining us today, for people who are eligible for Sphinx Orchestral Partners audition and things like that, there's a lot of resources that are provided directly to musicians through that alliance. Slide, please. So getting more into context here and the why. It is always important to remind ourselves. As we've looked at our racial, ethnic, and gender diversity across the field for many years, next slide, please, we've seen some trend lines that have not changed very much. We've seen that Black or African American, Hispanic, Latinx, Native Hawaiian, and other Pacific Islander, and American Indian, Alaska Native representation is significantly lower among orchestra musicians than the population overall. And the longest standing trend of that is actually Black or African American musicians, with only very, very slight increases over the last 10-year period, much less thinking further back. This data is all available through our report, which is available at multiple places on our website. But as you can see, there's just not been a lot of change. This is not news to any of us. This is what we've all been living for many years. And this is why we are going through some seriously concerted effort right now to change the trend line. Next, please. Which brings us to how we respond. How do we change that trend line? How do we take something that has been a problem for generations and turn it around? What we are doing together is Inclusive Stages, which has the explicit goal of increasing the racial diversity of musicians in American professional and community orchestras. This is work that now we've been discussing and planning for about 2 years. We received initial and then continuing support from the Sakana Foundation, and we had a series of impressive first achievements with the pilot year, with the coalition and all the data partners, many of which include you. Next, please. Guiding values. This is something that for those of you who are not new to Inclusive Stages, hopefully you'll remember that every time we meet, we talk about why we're doing this, how we're doing it, what's leading us. And for those of you that paid close attention, you'll catch one little change here. First of all, musicians will always be included. This is a problem that affects musicians. This is a problem that requires musicians. And any problem that involves stakeholders can only be solved with the stakeholders. So it's really important that we make sure musicians are present at all times in this work. Within that, the perspectives of musicians of color, will always be prioritized. And I just want to clarify what that means. I think for anybody who has felt like they are committed to an issue or a struggle or dealing with a problem, often the people who are most affected by that problem find themselves the most responsible for fixing it. We're not going to continue that practice. However, we are not going to ignore any of those perspectives, experiences, opinions of those people who are most directly affected. So that's where I say their perspectives will be prioritized, but at no point will we be expecting the people who are the most directly affected to be coming up with all the solutions and doing all the work. This is our work as a group. Third, orchestras will determine their own goals and actions. Something that hopefully you can rely on is the League of American Orchestras is not issuing orders to orchestras. It is not saying how you are supposed to do exactly what you do. Our job is to provide as much support as possible by providing the information, by providing resources, by helping us learn and determine what will be the best ways to achieve our goals. And in this case, orchestras will set their own specific goals and plans. We will assist with the tracking of those goals and plans and supporting any challenges we find we're encountering. We'll hope that through this collective action, we'll be learning from each other in real time, and that things that quite often would prove insurmountable, with a little bit of collective wisdom and the trial and error of a large group, we're going to find our ways around those problems more quickly than we would alone. And the last one, this is the update. Last year, we were very time bound. We had less than a year. So we're going to focus on what we can get done right now. And that was kind of the guiding light there. We also said that we were going to stick only to what we could get done within current agreements. But what we ended up seeing was that orchestras took it upon themselves to change some of their agreements anyway. So seeing that there is that interest and capability out there, we're just not pretending it's not present. So we just want to honor all the hard work that has already happened with a large number of orchestras that are already making improvements to some areas of our work that were considered not the first place to go. There was a lot of vision that was involved in the last year, and we were very honored to see that. So our new guiding light here: we have waited long enough. Can we say it any more clearly than that? Our coalition, those of you that choose to join us, are committing ourselves to making measurable progress within these 3 years. So there's a lot of specificity there. We're saying the orchestras who are in the coalition. That means the orchestras, the musicians, the partner organizations, the youth orchestras, the education partners, all of us together. If we are doing all the things we say we are setting out to do, there is really no reason we should not see measurable progress within these 3 years. So that is our commitment. And this is a value that certainly can be informed by this group. So I welcome feedback on these, and whatever serves to best guide us as we go through the struggles and the successes of the next 3 years, please share what that could be. And if these values need to change, we can do that. Next slide, please. All right, so how we're doing it. We are about to get into some detail with you all. And for some, it'll be some familiar information because it's essentially the same structure as what we did the past year. But given that we have 3 years to do it in, there's more of it. And there's a little more variety. And the fact that we are expanding our coalition to include so many more kinds of individuals and organizations that makes the work more varied, and hopefully in the end more impactful. So just a disclaimer right now that for any of this that seems redundant, feel free to just kind of skim along with us and tune in when you hear something different. We do want to call out that as much as we are inviting everybody to be a part of this coalition, the coalition will only be successful through the commitment of all of the individual members. So please don't mistake our eagerness for you to join with our assumption that it is the right next step for you. You all need to determine if the commitments that we're asking for and if the goals that we're putting forward are the match for your organization where it is right now. We support every organization in a lot of different ways. This coalition is very specifically for organizations and individuals who are committed to this and are able to act in a number of ways within these 3 years. All right, let's get into the details. We are going to do 2 forms essentially. We've got data and coalition. The data has a number of aspects to it, and Sam Andrew, for those of you who have not met her, she is your best friend. She is going to make all of the work comprehensible, actionable, helpful, and she's going to do it nicely. It's remarkable. So Sam Andrew is our manager of inclusion and learning. So grateful to have her. She is the backbone of this program, and she's going to walk you through the data pieces.
Thanks, Kane. So we're going to cover briefly, I'm going to start with the 2 key components. So we're going to talk just with an overview of data collection piece and then the coalition building. And then we're going to get deeper into all of these details. So as you see on the screen here, the data collection piece over the next 3 years, there are going to be 4 different surveys that we'll do at various points in time. And we'll talk about the timeline in a little bit. They include the inclusion index, which is self-reported experiential data from staff and musicians within orchestras. They include the Audition Applicant Demographics Survey, which collects voluntary self-reported data from audition applicants who are individuals essentially seeking to enter professional orchestras. Audition and Tenure Practices Survey, which helps us understand the variety of audition and tenure practices and their prevalence in our field currently. And finally, the Orchestra Demographics Survey, which provides snapshots of racial, ethnic, and gender diversity within orchestras currently. And again, we're going to get into a little bit into more detail for all of these components. For coalition building, it really seeks to answer the question, what collaboration is missing? So there's a lot of different ways we can collaborate to get this work done, and we're going to seek to utilize all of these different stakeholders, all of these different perspectives to help us get us to that ultimate goal. So there are a couple of different ways that each orchestra can participate. There are 2 options, really. There's the first option, which is to participate as a data partner. And if you choose to be a data partner, you're essentially signing up to participate in 1 or more of the 4 data projects, but there's no further commitment. So you can sign up in any number of the data projects, but you will not be part of the actual coalition work itself. The second option for participation is as a full coalition member. Now, coalition members commit to doing all 4 of the data projects over the next 3 years, in addition to all of the coalition work that we'll be detailing in a little bit. And now this is a big piece that we're really excited about in our first year for a number of reasons. We were only focusing on professional and community orchestras. And for the next 3 years, we're really excited to include youth orchestras in our coalitions. So we're looking forward to welcoming, hopefully, several youth orchestras to our coalition to work all together as a group. We also are opening up the coalition to individual musicians, and we are defining here individual musicians as adult orchestral musicians who are not currently affiliated with an orchestra, or musicians whose orchestras choose not to participate in the national coalition. So individual musicians, and especially musicians of color, are invited to join the coalition. We do ask for a little bit of commitment in terms of participation in coalition-wide events, but they will not be participating in data projects, as those are primarily focused on orchestra-wide data. We also have institutional participation. And here we're defining institutions as any professionals who represent organizations that are connected to the orchestra field. This might include musician union leadership, staff members of the union or union locals, league organizational partners, orchestra pathways programs, higher education institutions, and equity, diversity, and inclusion consultants. And I also want to just note here, this is just kind of a sample list, but there may be other representation that would fit under institutions. So if you're not sure exactly how your organization might fit into this, please get in touch with us and we're happy to talk through how that might work for you and your organization. So those are the different ways to participate. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about what is all going to be happening. So the details about how all of this is going to work. For the data collection piece, now as a refresher, here are the 4 data projects that we're going to be doing over the next 3 years. And we're going to start with the Inclusion Index. So the Inclusion Index is a survey that was done in partnership with Accordant Advisors. This survey really allows orchestras to understand what's happening in their own organizational culture. It allows them to identify where future EDI efforts can best be focused and really track change over time. This survey that we're going to be doing in the next 3 years, it will happen only once. It's projected to happen in the 2nd year of the program. And this will be smaller in scope than the initial Inclusion Index. This is really meant to be to track change for the people who participated in the pilot Inclusion Index survey. But if you did not participate in the 1st year, this will still be incredibly beneficial for you and your orchestra. It will still provide a lot of information. It's just going to be a little bit smaller of a survey. So it'll be hopefully a little bit more manageable for you and your orchestra.
Hey, Sam, I just want to chime in for a moment on this Inclusion Index. First of all, a huge thank you to the orchestras that pulled it off in the pilot year, because I know it was a very short turnaround and it was a big ask. And I'm well aware of that, and I appreciate your willingness and ability to participate. I just want to say how important this side of the work is. It's very easy and unfortunately a bit habitual when solving problems to try to focus on the stakeholder, again, most affected by the problem. So in this case, talking about musicians of color, and to think, what are all the things that they need to succeed in getting into our orchestras? It's incredibly important that we recognize that our orchestras, as the hopeful homes and employers of these musicians, of all musicians, really have a duty to look at what needs to change within the organization. We cannot just put out our best effort to get a ton of new people into orchestras, into environments which historically have excluded them, and assume that nothing else needs to change. Just getting there, just getting people in there is not enough. We need to improve culture for all of us. This is something that will have benefits for every aspect of the organization. If we can improve work environments within orchestras, if we can have information about how people are feeling about their jobs across the organization, there's a ton of benefit that can provide for just about any goal an organization has. But in this case, organizational culture and improving it is not something that we consider a nice to have. We consider it a must have to ensure the best possible working environment for every musician involved in this.
Thank you, Kane. Yeah, and just to stress the importance of that culture, through this program, the data project you'll see all tackle different pieces of this kind of pipeline into the orchestra world. So this really tackles that culture piece and helps improve not just the culture for musicians of color or staff members of color, but really to improve the culture for everyone in the orchestra, which I think is really, really important and really meaningful. So this is the Inclusion Index. Next is the Audition Applicant Demographics Survey. This focuses on the collecting self-reported data from individuals who are applying to positions in orchestras. We currently have this survey in use by many orchestras. Many of you are participating in that, so thank you for your participation and your data that you help us collect. This is done in partnership with Accepted and the National Alliance for Audition Support. And this is free for everyone involved. It's free for applicants, it's free for orchestras to use, and it's pretty straightforward. Orchestras are able to just send this link directly to their audition applicants, and then that data, if they use the Accepted program, that data then goes directly to the orchestras and directly to the league as well. So we receive all of the anonymous data in addition to you as the participant. Next, we've got the Audition and Tenure Practices Survey. This survey, I'm going to hand it over to Kane to talk a little bit about. Kane, there we go.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk for a moment about this because a year ago, this didn't exist. This was an idea that we had that we thought was obviously a really important bit of information and could hopefully provide some inspiration for people looking for improved practices. It was also in the discussions we were having about this program, this was one of the more divisive topics. So as I was talking to all forms of stakeholders about the work we wanted to achieve, some people would say to me that asking for audition and tenure practices of an orchestra, well, like, why not? It's public information. You could probably even just find it online. Just go ahead and get it, grab it. Don't worry about it. Other people would say like, whoa, hold on. If you're going to be asking for all that information, that's a big topic. What is it you're looking for? How are you going to get that? It quickly became a sensitive topic for a lot of people. Our working theory was that by using the coalition environment to workshop the questions themselves, the aims of the study, and then by running it as a test pilot with the coalition, that we could hopefully just work through any of the thorny issues and see the sensitivities in advance, make sure that everybody's concerns were addressed. And what we experienced was a ton of positive engagement. We had tons of suggestions, questions that were really helpful in clarifying the intent of it and how to define certain practices and even framing of questions. We saw engagement from all forms of stakeholders. We saw engagement from individual musicians, from orchestra staff, from union representatives. Really everybody jumped on board to get this to happen. And we ended up with a really strong survey that now we are going to be prepared to roll out much more widely. So this was for us an example of taking an issue which at the start was divisive, and through the efforts of the coalition, we found consensus rather quickly and were able to get a lot of information. So thank you for those of you that made that happen, and I'm really excited to take it further.
Thanks, Kane. So this survey, we are hoping to roll it out in 2025 with a public summary later than in 2026. So hopefully we're excited to get a lot more data this time around. Finally, we have the Orchestra Demographics Survey, which hopefully many of you are familiar with. This previously has been done annually, and this survey is really focused on race, ethnicity, and gender demographic data for orchestra musicians, staff, board of directors, conductors, music directors, and executive directors. So this really provides a snapshot of demographics in league orchestras. And it also contributes to our efforts to track these trends over time. Going forward, we're going to be conducting this survey in January of 2025, and after that shifting to a 2-year cycle. So the next run of it would be in 2027. So just to kind of give a general timeline for these surveys over the next 3 years, I just want to note the timeline may shift a little bit, but these are our current projections. If things do change, we will be communicating this out to everyone so that they know well in advance what expectations are and what the timelines will be. So year one, this coming year, we're looking at the Audition Applicant Demographics Survey, which is ongoing, and the Orchestra Demographics Survey in January. And from there, we've got in year two, Audition Applicant Demographics Survey, the Audition and Tenure Practices Field-Wide Survey, and the Smaller Scale Inclusion Index. And finally, in year three, again, the Audition Applicant Demographics Survey and the Orchestra Demographics Survey. And with that, we will now shift to talking through the coalition. Kane, I hand it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So this coalition that we've been talking about, it was great at the start and was necessarily focused on the actions that professional and community orchestras could take to improve their recruitment and retention of musicians of color. But of course, from the beginning, we've acknowledged that that would be insufficient ultimately to really solve the problem. And as soon as possible, we wanted to expand the coalition to include youth orchestras, education partners, and a number of other kinds of organizations. So we are now at that moment. The intent of the coalition is still the same. It's based on collective action. It's based on the concept that to some degree, there's safety in numbers. When you see others doing it, you can have a little more faith that the efforts are going to pay off. There's also the opportunity for real-time learning. So by us sharing our goals, by us sharing our progress, sharing challenges, brainstorming how to get around them, we are going to get this work done better and faster than if we were doing it alone. The goal of this coalition, just going to say it again, we want to see measurable improvement of the racial or ethnic diversity of our coalition orchestra musicians within 3 years. We have a lot of reason to think that's possible based on the changes that have already been put in place by a number of orchestras, but that's going to take focus and determination. So we thank you in advance for that. And as with the pilot phase, we have facilitation support from leading change makers. And those of you that got to work with Anthony and Carrie in previous sessions hopefully saw how helpful they were, how adaptable they were, and how intent they are on focusing all of this work to be helpful for orchestras, for musicians, for youth orchestras, for higher education. They actually have experience in a wide range of artistic areas, and they've been really helpful in making sure this does not feel like some of the
Oh, it's not mine. Hero.
Well, looks like we might have lost Kane. If he comes back, hopefully we'll be able to pick up where we left off. But in the meantime, yes, Leading Changemakers is our primary facilitation partner through all of this. And they've been absolutely wonderful to work with. We are excited to continue working with them in the coming 3 years. And for those of you who don't know, hopefully you will get the opportunity to meet them and experience. They're both incredible human beings, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with them. So there are several benefits to joining for orchestras. So providing this coalition is really an opportunity to help orchestras collaborate with each other, share information, making sure that we're aligning efforts across the entire pipeline, from youth orchestras to higher education to professional orchestras, and really learn from each other's successes and failures. Through this work, we seek to really establish a new benchmark for change in our field, and we've already started to see some of that. In our pilot year, we're looking forward to continuing that and refining this benchmark for change, the expectation that we can move the needle as a group together. Orchestras that do join the coalition will receive priority for free participation in the Inclusion Index. You may have noticed on that Inclusion Index slide, we are subsidizing it for up to 75 orchestras, and coalition members will receive priority for that participation. In addition, group 3 through 8 orchestras and individual musicians will receive travel support for all in-person travel or in-person convenings, the same way that we did this past year. Coalition members will also receive free access to all inclusive stages trainings. So through this coalition work, we are going to be developing a series of training modules. We're looking at roughly 1 to 2 training modules per year. And these will be provided for free to all coalition members. They will be available for orchestras and other organizations outside the coalition as well, but it will be free for all coalition members. And finally, coalition members are going to receive the highest level of access to all of our findings from the 4 data projects. So some of those of you who participated in the audition and tenure practices survey, you'll be able to receive some of those high-level findings in addition to the audition applicant demographics survey findings, etc. So really, there are a lot of benefits to joining, and I see that Kane has joined us again. So I will see, Kane, are you good
I'm here. My
okay, great.
my internet stopped, so I'm on my phone. Can't tell you what's going on. Internet went away. Gotta love it. Thanks.
So we were just about to switch to talking through coalition expectations. So Kane, if you're good to go, then I will hand it back over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you. So for professional and community orchestras, otherwise known as adult orchestras, I'm not going to read through every single one here, but please do review them. They're really important. We are asking essentially for participation. An example of that is to attend the trainings and join a working group. We're going to talk about working groups, what those are. As far as making the commitment to join, we are asking that your executive director and your board chair sign off on this. We just want to make sure that there's overall awareness and support for this effort. And for engagement, which is incredibly important. We are asking each orchestra to commit to involving directly their executive director, their music director, and their musicians. And for the musicians part, it needs to go beyond just representation. It's certainly expedient to work through elected representatives, existing committees, all of that, and that's perfectly adequate for getting a large amount of the work done. But for this to actually have meaning, for this to result in positive outcomes for everybody involved, all of the musicians need to be aware of and have opportunities to provide input for this entire process. We won't be successful without that, and we're going to provide a lot of support to help orchestras manage that, hopefully have that go as efficiently as possible. We know it's not always an easy, simple, direct process, but it's really going to be critical. The same goes for the music director. We said this particularly in the pilot year that the music director is the person more often than not who actually makes the decisions of hiring, retention, and non-retention. And to attempt to solve this without the music director does not make sense. That being said, we recognize that music directors have a unique role within the organization and will need to involve themselves in any number of ways, which will probably look very different than the ways other people are involved. We completely respect that. What we ask is that every orchestra commit to us how they will be involving their music director. Same for the musicians. No 2 plans will look exactly alike. We're incredibly flexible on what we would consider a commitment, significant engagement, and we'll be giving examples of that. But we will not be successful without engagement of both those constituencies. So what does the engagement look like? These are just examples that we've already seen amongst a range of orchestras. And this in no way is anywhere close to an exhaustive list. There are any number of things, and we'll certainly be happy to share the creativity that comes out of the group. As we see people reporting in, we'll be sharing, here are more examples. Have you tried this? That's something that we'll be doing constantly. Next slide, please. So for youth orchestras, first of all, welcome. Sorry for the delay, and thank you for joining. We're really excited to have youth orchestras included. Youth orchestras play a really important role here, but of course it is different. So the commitments are similar when it comes to participation. We ask that you attend the meetings, attend the trainings, and participate in working groups. But of course, the involvement of musicians, which in your case are youth, that's a very different prospect. I'll just say, for my own opinions about youth orchestra, to diversify your ensembles, but the way they are involved, the information they receive, the input they provide, that's all going to be very unique to your organization, your goals. So we don't have that same requirement of a musician engagement plan for youth orchestras, but we certainly expect to see lots of helpful examples of how youth are involved in this discussion. And because of the wide range of conductor situations with youth orchestras, we're asking that you do include at least one of your conductors. Some of you have music directors, some of you don't. So we would leave it to you to decide who might be the most helpful participant, but at least one.
And it looks like we might be losing you, but yes, we are asking for a minimum of one conductor or music director engaged in the work. So for youth orchestras, there are a number of ways that engagement might play out, and you'll see these are very similar to samples that we've seen in adult orchestras. Some of this is a little bit different for these conductors. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, just kind of some starting points for ideas. Yes, and so these will continue to be developed as we start to work with youth orchestras more directly through the coalition work. So we have some sample orchestra actions. Kane, I see you're back.
Yes, I am. Apparently, they are actually working on the internet and cell phone lines right outside my house right now. That's fantastic. Apologies to everybody. Want me to pick it up with actions?
Yes, we just started.
Yeah, that's great. Goodness. So, yeah, thank you for all the things that have already happened in the last year. We've seen a lot of progress already. I just want to call out some of the new opportunities here. Within the last few months, Black Orchestral Network released, I guess already this was back in January, my goodness, they released the 10 steps toward equity and the tenure process. So really great, specific, actionable recommendations. Just within the last month, Black Orchestral Network, in partnership with AFM, issued for their members what they called model standards and procedures for probationary process. This is actually an entirely laid out, word by word set of language that can be used to update the probationary process. And it includes all the spots to drop in your unique situations, your unique numbers. It's completely adaptable. But they really did some incredible work of taking a lot of the thinking that's been swirling around and turning it into usable language. So right now that's available to musicians through AFM, and we're going to be working with AFM to make that available to orchestras of all kinds, and we highly recommend them. There's a number of other recommendations here, and we'll be getting much more into detail on this through the actual coalition activity. So then working groups, we've alluded to this a few times. This is going to be a little bit new for this aspect, this iteration of inclusive stages. We have too much work to do just trying to gather all of us at once every single time. And there are very different kinds of work that people are interested in pursuing. So we are going to be dividing up into various working groups. Those working groups are going to follow along the lines of the priorities that have already been articulated and that will be articulated by the members of the coalition. What we've seen so far is that topics like musician engagement, audition and tenure practices, higher education partnerships, perhaps something focusing specifically on a job description for musicians. In some cases, that's blasphemy. In some cases, that's a no-brainer. We got to find what's in the middle and who is interested. Intersectionality. There are people where there are multiple things going on that are affecting their state of inclusion with orchestras, and that's been brought up as a possible working group. This is going to be flexible. We really will have it be guided by the priorities of the coalition. But the idea is that it is also led by members of the coalition. So as much as Sam and I care about all this work, we would not be able to effectively support you in managing whatever number of working groups we're going to be having. So we'd love to point out these opportunities for leadership for you all. So for anybody who feels the most committed to certain aspects or has a little bit of capacity, and is just itching for a chance to lead, this is going to be your chance. And we'll certainly support it. We'll be providing a number of resources and support from our facilitators. And of course, as needs arise for things like training and larger conversations and conference topics and all of that, we will be listening to the working groups. We'll say, what is it that you need to get to this next step? What are the things that people are having trouble getting past? What can we do to add to the resources? So the working groups for us are really going to be the lifeblood of this. And they'll set their own tone, their own pace. We'll have some minimum expectations of how often they meet, but it's not going to be the kind of situation where you get demerits if you're not at every single meeting. This is really important collaborative work that will benefit from everybody being there, but we know how much work all of this is. So we're going to work with you and just make sure that everybody can stay engaged and benefit from what's going on.
And I just want to add one more piece. This is something that we got a lot of feedback last year. A lot of our coalition members expressed an interest and a desire to see some sort of structure like this. But we were moving so quickly last year that it wasn't really feasible to kind of formalize that structure. So we're really excited to take that feedback and integrate it into, as Kane said, the kind of backbone and core work of the coalition in the next 3 years. So thank you to all of you last year who really encouraged us and expressed that interest. So we're really excited to make this happen. So we've got some just a glimpse of what's coming up for the coalition. So from now through December, the beginning of December, we're going to be in recruitment mode. And the intent is to have our first meeting of the expanded new coalition in January 2025. This will primarily be probably for musicians, executive leadership, artistic leadership. This is going to function a little bit as onboarding for some of our new orchestras, our new coalition members, and it's going to help kind of establish some goals for those who are new and allow a chance to revisit goals for people in orchestras who participated in the pilot year of inclusive stages. In the spring of 2025, we're going to have a mix of virtual and regional in-person coalition-wide convenings. So we'll communicate more about those as we have more details. And these are going to kind of work on actions and metrics and start to get into the nitty-gritty of those goals. How do we accomplish these goals? What are the first steps that we take toward our goals? And in the spring, we're also going to start establishing some of those working groups that Kane was just talking about. So as our orchestras set their goals for themselves, we're going to take those and pull some themes from them to then create the working group. So we're really going to be establishing that structure in the spring. And then in June, in our Salt Lake City conference, we're going to have our first national in-person convening of the expanded coalition. This will be an opportunity for everyone to meet together. Coalition members will be able to share the status of their current work, and then they'll also participate in a workshop that will be led by leading change makers. So those are the upcoming meetings. And there's going to be a lot more information. I know we've already given a lot of information to you today. We're not expecting you to remember all of this. So as Kane said at the beginning, all of this will be available to you through our website. We will be continuing to communicate about this through email. But what are your next steps? There are a few different options. So we highly encourage you to discuss this internally. What is the right level of involvement for your orchestra? Does it make sense right now to be a data partner? Or is your orchestra prepared to become a coalition member? If you have specific questions, you'll be able to attend a Q&A session, and these are smaller sessions where you can engage directly with Kane and I. You can ask us questions about how your orchestra might participate. So I've got the dates and times up here on the slide, and in the slide deck that we share after this session, those will be live links, so you can just click on those and go to the registration pages. If you're ready to become a data partner, you can also sign up. The Audition Applicant Demographics Survey is already going on. You can sign up to participate in that at any point in time. And if you decide that you want to participate in the Orchestra Demographics Survey, that will start in January. So you can sign up now, and we'll make sure that you're on our mailing list to receive those communications. Finally, if you're ready to join the coalition, you can sign up. The registration page is live, so if you are ready, if you know that this is the right time for your orchestra to jump in, please join us. We're excited to have you. We will be sharing more specific details about the commitments as the recruitment process continues, but we are excited for all of these next steps. And yeah, I think there are, Kane, a couple questions.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah, I can start responding right away.
Yeah.
And I can't see the ones before I joined, but I do see the one that Lori just put in. Thank you for raising the issue of non-audition orchestras. Absolutely, Inclusive Stages still intends to support non-auditioning orchestras in increasing the diversity of their musicians. So auditions are obviously one of the ways orchestras find their musicians, but a lot of what we have talked about in Inclusive Stages has focused on recruitment. So whether that's recruitment for an audition or recruitment for direct placement into your orchestra, that's completely up to you. But how you recruit, the resources you have for recruiting, the organizational culture in which they find themselves once they're there, everything other than the audition is still entirely relevant. And please do participate. You can help us make sure that we are providing value for you. That's really important for us.
And in terms of the data projects and that piece of it, we're only expecting that orchestras participate in the data projects that are relevant to them. So if your orchestra doesn't do auditions, we're not going to expect that you do the Audition Applicant Demographics Survey. That wouldn't make sense. So it's really only you would participate in whichever pieces of the data collection that makes sense for your orchestra. Anna,
right, seeing the other response. Yeah, so joining the coalition, can it be done at any time? Short answer is no, not at any time. There will be times where things are just midstream and it's not a workable time to add people in. We are realistic though, and we acknowledge that not every orchestra can jump on board right now for all 3 years. So we anticipate that annually there will be additional orchestras that want to join. So for instance, if you feel right now is not the time for you, but you're hopeful that next year around this time, it will be the right time, that would be fantastic. We will find a way to onboard you then. That being said, there are also specific projects, of course, that may work for you. So even if you can't join the coalition right now, you could still take part in some of the data projects or other activities, and then perhaps join the coalition later. Next question. Can orchestras that include student, community, and professional musicians be included? Yes, all 3 of those. Absolutely. Next, will the demographics survey involve youth orchestras at all? Sam, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, and we actually have a couple other questions about the demographic survey as well. We do provide the demographic survey. So the way that the demographic survey works, if your orchestra has not yet participated, is in January, we'll be sending out a link to or an email to everyone that says we're starting the demographic survey. We do encourage orchestras to provide self-reported data, meaning that you ask your musicians and your staff to identify themselves as they would like to be identified. So really providing that demographic back to, a personnel manager or an HR representative any staff member like that, and then that person would come back to us and provide essentially the totals for us. And what we do is we collect that information through a platform internally, and then we are able to provide that information back out through our EDI data hub that Kane referenced towards the beginning of this session. This survey does include youth orchestras. So if you're a youth orchestra, you can participate in the demographic survey, even if you're not part of the coalition. That is something you're absolutely welcome to do. And if you have not already been on our email list, please feel free to reach out and we'll make sure that we get you added to our mailing list as well.
And one note about the various ways of participating in inclusive stages. Obviously, being a data partner, being a coalition member gets you the best access, but there will also be select opportunities where they will be, for instance, subsidized for inclusive stages members, a smaller discount for league members, and then in some cases also available to the public. So as we look at doing different kinds of trainings and making resources available, it's not exclusively available to inclusive stages, but in all cases, inclusive stages will have the priority access, which means it's free or the most heavily discounted. And in cases where capacity is limited, that would first go to inclusive stages members.
Yes, thanks, Kane. And I just want to make one more note about the demographic survey. We do provide the questions, and when I said we do encourage self-reported demographic data, we do also provide some resources on how to collect that data. So we're not just leaving you on your own to do that. But yes, are there any other questions? And I just want to note we do have 2 Q&A sessions coming up. So if you have more questions or if you think of more questions, please feel free to sign up for one of those. But if there are any other questions immediately.
So we'll just say thank you to everyone. We've already dropped the website in the chat. Sam, why don't you put the email address in there as well? That you can also see the website on the screen right now. It's quite simple. It's americanorchestras.org/inclusive stages. We will make a habit of posting everything there. Once you're involved, you'll also have access to our internal communication system, League 360, where we'll have a whole library of resources and conversations going. But for right now, all the public information is at that website. So thank you so much to everybody. Please send us your questions, your suggestions. Please join if you can, tell others about it. And we are excited and grateful to be at this moment of making some truly incredible change with you. Thank you.
Thank you all.